are your hosts, Philip, David, and Jennie.
Jeneth. The
Jennie.
name always lives on.
Just so the listeners have a little clue into what just happened, we recorded our intro and Jennie did it on mute.
I did.
And then
I
had
was
to redo
sparing,
it.
I was sparing their ears from the sound of slaw chewing.
I refuse to act like that
Slaw?
didn't happen.
Wait, morning slaw? Are you having coleslaw? We're in the afternoon.
It's
I forget.
12:42 p.m. in Arizona, Philip.
For some of us, this is early, but morning for some of us. But I
Oh no,
understand.
it is not for I. For I wake up naturally every day at 6:30 a.m.
God, I am so sorry. I apologize to you. David, how have you been? How's your week been since last we saw each other?
Not bad. I had to cover some sick people at work, and so I had to work extra. My week normally starts on Sunday, but this week it had to start on Saturday.
Did you yourself get sick? I mean, have we avoided the
No,
faux
I'm
pas of? No, you're
I'm
good.
I've just been experiencing allergies since April. Like since April,
I've been allergy
I've had
season
allergies.
for a mad long time.
I normally it's just
Oh,
the
definitely.
grass, and it comes sometime around June for me, but like it just hasn't stopped since April. For like there's good days and bad days, but pretty consistent.
Jennie, besides allergies, what have you been up to this past week?
Way too much headbanging. I went to my first official heavy metal concert this last week.
Nice. Who was it?
I went and saw 3 bands. The headliner was Megadeth.
Yes,
and
I've heard.
The first openers were a band called All That Remains and Mudvayne. Woof! Mudvayne. Those guys are intense. It's thankfully I'm getting a nice, when I'm going to see these concerts, I'm getting a wide variety exposure to different levels of darkness when it comes to heavy metal. Mudvayne they're like dancing in the realm of horror with they do full makeup, they do big intros, their art is all very, I wouldn't say satanic, but it feels like it. It gets heavy, but I had a really good time.
When I was 16, I know I've told this story before on the podcast, but years ago, I think, when we had Jake on, because he was at this concert with me, Jake Corlang, friend of the podcast, recorded our That Slaps baseline.
Yes.
He and I went to see Avenged Sevenfold when we were 16 years old.
Oh,
and
wow. Mm-hmm.
there were 2 bands opening for them. There was one Swedish band. The first band was Avatar. They were super weird. But then there was Five Finger Death Punch, was the second band.
Mm-hmm.
And they came on, and we were all of a sudden at a Five Finger Death Punch concert. And then
Unconsenting.
they left the stage. Yeah, exactly. And they left the stage, and then it became an Avenged Sevenfold concert. But for about 35 to 40 minutes, it was a Five Finger Death Punch concert.
Isn't it amazing how even within music, how you can have variables of whatever genre it is, where you can go to the extreme metal, you can go to the mid metal, you can go to the beginner's metal, all within even the same concert. Again, my limited experience is in like hip hop more so, of like how far into hip hop you can go and all that. But yeah. Well, excellent, Jennie. Hopefully you fully recovered from all the mosh pits that you probably were jumping around in.
Oh, I'm not allowed. Matt will not let me enter a mosh pit. He thinks it's too dangerous.
That is a good man. Here I say, you can hurt your nose. Like you can just hurt random stuff just going around in a mosh pit.
Oh yeah, on that note, actually, the last mosh pit he was in, someone straight up like walked toward him. He was looking for his glasses, and his nose had been whacked askew. Like he was bleeding out of his nose, and he was like, "I can't find my glasses." And Matt was like, I don't think you should worry about your glasses, buddy.
You got bigger problems, buddy.
You got bigger problems. Exactly.
My God. Well, I'm going to be putting my family's info on the streets here, on these podcast streets.
Oh?
Yes. So last night, my sister did her first day at a new job, and she's going to be working at a hotel, and was totally fine with it. Yeah. She works the night shift. So not the like late night shift, but the night going into the night. So she gets off at 11 p.m. So, you know, and she comes back. I've done the whole thing. Hey, hopefully have a great night at work. Next morning, how was work? And she says, great. Apparently only 2 people have been killed at work within the past 2 months or something. I said, oh, please, just out of curiosity, guests or fellow employees, I guess realistically it doesn't fully matter, but I guess it matters a little bit. because somehow,
Yeah.
yeah, because worrying about, if it's both employees does somehow make it worse. No, she said it was 1-1. The employee just had their throat slit. Not to be too graphic here. And I said, yeah, well, maybe we should find another. That's great, but she's like, otherwise the job is great. I'm like, Beth, friend of the podcast here, Beth. I really enjoy you as a sister, and part of that enjoyment is that having you alive. Maybe maybe there are other jobs. I've never, maybe McDonald's. I mean, I don't know how you feel. And so, anyways, so I've been having to quarrel with the idea of being the two. Like, I'm going to step in here and do it versus like just let her live her life. But my God, that was a story. And she's like, as soon as I like ever see a dead body or I walk in a room, because they've said that happened before, that there's a dead body, I'm going to be out because there's just no time for where that's acceptable. I said, I don't even think that like if that's on the table, that's pretty heavy. Like, I don't, if all of a sudden as part of your job where you're getting paid, like not paid appropriately for that trauma, I said, maybe, not even once is enough on that. I don't know. So that's been my internal dilemma. We aren't doing on the mini seg, like, am I, or, questioning, I need to hear me out. So I thought I'd bring it here. So I don't know. That's something that I've been internalizing, but that's been my great dilemma of the week. So I'll continue.
I don't blame you. That's scary.
Yeah. Mosh pits, killing in the hotel, motel, Holiday Inn. It's been a very, very scary intro to this, but let's get to a fun rest of the episode. Why don't we?
Yes. 180. Let's go.
It has been time. It has been long awaited, but here we are. It has all led to this. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we have concluded the Blockbuster Draft of 2024. And we're not even awaiting that. What we have waited, what the people, what the audience, what the generations, what the members of society have been waiting for has been something that will have come to fruition here in just a few moments. But first, before that, it is time that we recap what happened during the summer blockbuster. And before I do so, I need to invite back to the podcast one Gareth Boucher. Welcome back, Gary. As coming in at number 4, it is appropriate that I introduce you first, as your team fell far below expectations with your assembled
2 years running.
2 years running, yes. He started off hot in the first year, in the first embarkment of the summer blockbuster, winning the first one, and since then coming in disappointing results ever since. But you had a good showing, you had a fair showing, but you finished first. You had first for a long time, Gary, and then you slowly just went down and down and down the rankings, finally ending up with a combined total of 282 combined million. So
that's
any words in memoriam here, Gary?
The Furiosa Hive, the Apes Hive, you guys really dropped the ball. I it's more of, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Like when your parents would say that, I'm like, I'm just at a loss. I thought that after Fury Road, you guys would show up, and you didn't. And Ridley Scott.
It's the problem when you wait 9 years, man, or 8 years or whatever it was.
9 years. Not great.
9 years.
Not great.
Yeah.
I was there day one for each of these releases. I was hyped. I tried to pad the stats. I bought my concessions. I saw it in Dolby.
Ooh.
Fancy.
I mean, I knew that with Deadpool around the corner and a bunch of these other movies, it was a pipe dream. But I thought maybe Apes would bring people back. But apparently not, man. It's a sad day for Gary. It's just been a sad week,
Yes. Gary had an action-packed roster with Fall Guy, Fury Road, Furiosa, I should say. Fury Road, he might have fared a lot better. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and your fourth one was, I'm blanking right now, Gary. What was your fourth one?
I'm actually blanking too. Those were the three
that you felt confident. But anyways, it remains. So thank you for playing here, Gary. Stick around for the rest as you came in fourth. Next was David Hoffman at third, 352 combined for his roster. We've heard how much he actually surprisingly adored Twisters.
Yeah.
But But third place he reigns. Over the lifetime of this bit, David, you've been second or third. I don't think you've ever come in fourth, but here you are again coming
I don't
in a
remember
third.
what happened, how well I did the first year, but I don't. Yeah, I don't know. But last year I didn't come fourth, and this year also not. I'm proud of the way the Twisters. I think it did pretty well. I think in theaters. I don't know. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed A Quiet Place Day one. I don't think anyone expected me to do 350 million with the
No.
selections that I made, which I did without doing any research really. So relatively happy with that. I didn't want Bad Boys 2 or Bad Boys Ride or Die or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I didn't
That
want
was a
that to do
positive
well.
surprise.
I didn't want that to do well at all. So yeah. Anyway, I was relatively happy with my selections, and I knew I kind of felt like I wasn't going to win, but did well enough to be proud of.
And here is where our social media journey of line graphs and people following along ended, and why we are here to begin with. Coming in at number 2, even though she had the number 1 overall pick and picked the correct one, number 1 overall, certainly. She had the number 1 draft pick. She found the jewel of the draft, and she took him number 1 with Deadpool, Wolverine. She still comes up short at 522 million combined for her gross international opening. Jennie, you are second this year, coming after a very well-received first entry to this draft for you. You won last year with Barbenheimer. You come in second, so your average is stupendous. However, you do not win this year. And in a moment of closing, how did you feel that you did this year?
Well, it was certainly a shocking upset. I really thought that Deadpool and Wolverine would lock in the win for me this year. But I mean, it also, I guess, note for the future when it comes to drafts, I gotta be a little less confident in the number 1 overall pick. You can't simply rely on the number 1 overall pick to be your crown jewel, especially since I didn't really pick any movies that were worth creating any bonus stats. So I gotta be a little less confident in my number 1s in the future.
Number 1 was correct. The rest were favorites, were tender, emotional favorites that had a few gone your way, would have certainly set you up for success. However, because of the timing and how everything happens, I still, as of this recording right now, we do not know what my 4th and final film, Borderlands, did for its opening. We do know that it was released to massive critical just boos and criticism and everything else.
It's getting destroyed.
Destroyed across the aisle from both critics and audience.
Exactly?
It's a video game film a la Assassin's Creed, a la anything. And apparently it's the worst version of that. With Kate Blanchett.
Can I share my favorite review that I have seen so far? I was just scrolling Rotten Tomatoes when the numbers were starting to come in for this movie because I was like, it's on Philip's roster. Let's see what people are starting to say. And someone wrote, you know that situation where you want to press the X button to get through all the storyline to get straight to the gameplay? You can't do that here. There's no escaping it this time. This movie's terrible.
Yeah.
And they gave me a good laugh.
Yes. So without even that knowledge, we just knew that it was pretty much going to come down to it. It wasn't close enough to have that matter. So we will certainly have that updated on our socials when it comes out. But it does mean that I have won with the dynamic duo of Inside Out 2, the sequel, Garfield, surprisingly, and of course the other one that did all right, that did just fine, but Despicable Me, yeah. 4 or 5, I don't even remember. One of the sequels. Yeah, 4.
We're literally in the upside down right now.
Did Garfield do well?
Garfield did well as well, yes. Garfield did well enough. It outpaced a bunch of yours. So between those 3 alone, animation domination came, baby. I have a combined total with just the 3 of 623 million on my opening, making me the winner. Everybody bow to my brilliance. We have long awaited since the inception of this concept. We have waited and demanded that Philip take home at least one victory, and here it is. We are so gratified for all the research, for all of you who thought that you could. I am the one who did. Thank you. I humbly bow. But
can I just add one nugget in back before we move on? How many voice acting performances does Chris Pratt have to butcher before we stop casting him?
Yeah, and you know what's most frustrating about that is that I heard somebody say, like, and I completely agree with this. I would have seen Chris Pratt far easier in a role like Odie in the very same film. Like, I think he works perfectly in that role, but it's because it's Chris Pratt and he's a name that at least has recognition, we have to put him as Garfield, and it just does not fit. I don't know. Anyways,
do you mean you don't support Chris Pratt as an Italian American icon?
I can't say I did. I can't say I
mean, he has done Mario, so.
Yes, he has. Well, in light of that, that does lead us to my reward, and what a reward it is. I have gotten the luxury, the gem, the present that, and I do say present, the present that is the choice to pick whatever it is I wanted this episode to be around. And the main topic that I wanted is a movie review. And with that, I'm going to go around the room and just out of curiosity, Jennie, what movie did I ask you to review?
You asked us to review A Christmas Carol, a TV movie version of The Christmas Carol.
In the middle of summer, because it is my favorite film of Christmas. Anybody who knows me during the holidays knows that I watch at least 4 versions of this film, which is why I asked you, Gary, what film did I ask you to watch?
Basically, your RRR, which was FX's Scrooge Satanic Christmas Carol. Is this your favorite version of A Christmas Carol?
And then what version did I ask you to watch, David?
Wait, we all watched different.
I don't know. You sent me a poster.
I sent
2004.
You a poster. That would be A Christmas Carol, the
version.
musical. I put in a little delightful version for myself and also the audience, if ever they want to join us on this journey, that all 3 of you have set upon separately without knowing that each of you went differently. But again, the same base story. To go watch your own version of A Christmas Carol that I don't know if any of you had ever seen prior.
You're actually evil. Oh my god.
And David, the chef's kiss was giving you the musical. Okay, so here's what happened. I sent each of you to go watch this. Each of you is going to have your own best thing. Each of you is going to have your own worst thing. Each of you is going to have your own half-baked for your own version. And of course, we'll proceed each one with whatever version you had.
Are you going to reveal at some point which one was your actual favorite?
Yes, I will. I will reveal which one was my favorite and what made each of these memorable for me. Full disclosure, the musical one is its own memorable version, although it's not alone in its memorable version. But every year around Christmas time, my favorite film is A Christmas Carol. I watch a different version, one version that I haven't seen, 3 other versions that I have seen. So every year I don't run out. I love it. It is fantastic. And now you all can join me on this version early on. It is Christmas in the middle of August, September by the time this episode releases. Let's get to it. All right, David. In general, what is your short summary of A Christmas Carol, just in general?
Ebenezer Scrooge is a grumpy old who hates Christmas and all the Christmas spirit of those around him. On Christmas Eve, he is visited by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future who seek to show him the joy he's lost and what's at stake if he can't change.
We lost Jennie. Jennie's gone. Jennie was not expecting that. All right. A wonderful and poignant
I
Christmas
needed
Carol.
to hear that.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Yes, you did. Jennie, let's start out with you. What was your worst thing about, and if you would, before you ever give an opinion on this for all 3 of you, if you can relist, just say what version you saw. You just saw A Christmas Carol, George C. Scott's version.
Yes, I saw a made-for-TV movie that came out in 1984. It starred George C. Scott as Ebenezer Scrooge. It's a very traditional adaptation. There's nothing really super out of the ordinary about the version I watched. It was deemed, and when I was researching trivia as well, it was deemed very, very classic. And sorry, what else were you wanted me to say?
What is your bestest thing about this film?
I do want to give this version of A Christmas Carol some credit. They did a magnificent job with their interpretation of the ghost of Christmas future. Everyone's got a unique version of how they want to handle this character. It's always kind of looks the same, but everybody has their different way of portraying it. They did a lot of eye-catching shadow play with this version, and it made it the most terrifying and mysterious, if for on the small screen at least, it was the most terrifying version I'd personally seen, because there's a lot of, it's never directly on camera. It's only on camera once or twice, but you see like his hand, or you see his shadow against the wall, or you see him kind of in the corner, or you see a light shining from behind the camera, things like that.
You're saying for the Ghost of Christmas Future?
Yes, for the Ghost of Christmas Future. So I did enjoy seeing that. I was like, oh, where is he going to pop up? Where is he going to point to? How is that going to... That made it... It caught my attention.
David, let's go to you for your thing that was half-baked. What version did you see again?
I saw the 2004 version.
Nobody in that movie was a virgin, let me tell you.
Well, it's a musical with Kelsey Grammer
As Scrooge.
The half-baked thing for me, Philip, when you told me this was the movie I was going to watch, you sent me the poster so that I wouldn't get it confused with the many other versions of this film.
Yes.
My half-baked thing about this film is the poster, is the front cover of the DVD or whatever. It literally shows Scrooge carrying the kid and like happy and smiling. It's like, that's the ending of the movie.
Spoilers.
You spoiled the ending of the... I mean, I guess it's kind of obvious where the movie's going, but that's really stupid. Like, that's literally the final scene. That's the revelation, that's the ending of the movie. And they put that on the poster. That's like, I don't know. Let me think. What's that like? That's like you take Avengers Endgame and you show Thanos disappearing into nothing on the poster of the movie.
Him being snapped away. Yeah.
Right,
Absolutely.
exactly. That was super half-baked. Like, what were you thinking?
Yes, it's one of the rare films that I don't even know can get away with it, but certainly it was a bold choice. Certainly a bold choice. Gary, your worst thing about your film, and what version did you watch?
You dirty bastard. I have to vamp here for 2 seconds before I go to my... Okay, so I'm shocked that you guys did not see the hellscape that was FX's technically mini-series, but can be watched as a movie because it was released as a 3-hour excuse me for swearing.
You certainly got the longest film.
3
You got
hours.
the longest version.
Dark
yes.
fantasy version of A Christmas Carol where FX said, what if we made Scrooge a sociopath? And just, what if we just around from there? We'll just make him a sociopath and see what happens. There is child molestation. There is adult molestation. There are people's jaws falling off and exposed throat holes. There is torture. There is death. There is... Wow. Every 30 seconds I turned to my fiance, I was like, did Scrooge get molested in the original? I don't remember that. did Scrooge try to force a woman to be a prostitute in the original? I don't remember that.
God, I just do not remember Christmas involving.
Was there a person?
What have you done?
I was like, was there a person with a severed leg that laying in the street crying? And I mean, oh my God. Okay. So I watched FX's 3-hour dark version of A Christmas Carol where some emo kid from the 90s whose uncle works in FX's boardroom was like, yo, I have an idea. What if we made it like dark, bro? And that was mine. Needless to say.
With Guy Pearce as Ebenezer Scrooge.
As
Scrooge.
Wow.
I actually enjoyed it, but I was like, when you sent me that and I looked it up, I was like, you bastard. So, my worst thing. Okay, so just as an aside, you can make that sucker 2 hours. Okay, we don't need 3 hours of Scrooge being an actual supervillain, like a real sociopath. Like,
can I say that I knew the moment that Gary actually was sitting down to watch it because I got a text from Gary saying, "Hey, I just want to clarify, just make sure. Are you sure that this isn't a TV series?" Like, because I was like, "Oh no." That's a movie. Trust me,
It's-
I've seen it. It's a long movie.
It is a
but,
movie.
I
It's a
just got
3-hour
this text.
miniseries that they then cut into a 3-hour movie, which is like, oh my god, we don't need that. But a thing is that it's a fantasy movie. There's like a lot of dream sequences. Of course, that there's flashbacks like in every Christmas Carol, but this one there's a bunch of different animation styles and things that they're doing with the CGI that I just like thought really pulled me out of the movie. Like at one point they're in a storybook. At one point there is a child drowning in Scrooge's office above him, and he's like swimming in the air. And I was like, what intern got like the new version of After Effects and was like, hey, do you guys care if I just like mess around a little bit? And just, you know, I'm just going to throw some stuff in there. And they're like, do whatever you want, man. Do whatever you want. I was like, what are we doing with the digital effects here, guys? It was like a totally different movie for parts of it. So that super pulled me out of it. I was like, I didn't think that was necessary. So that was probably my worst part, was the distracting digital effects. You know, it was 2019. So I think we're kind of coming out of that era a little bit, but back then it was like every 6 months there was new technology, and people were like, what if we did it though? What if we made like really tall blue
Let's push
people?
the boundary.
Yeah, exactly.
So Gary, let's
Yeah.
take the baton and just keep going with you. What was your thing that was half baked about your Guy Pearce version?
So half baked. This one is tough because, like I said, Scrooge is like an absolute supervillain for like 90% of this movie. He is not, as David said, a grumpy old. He's like
He's more than grumpy.
He's Satan
serial.
incarnate. Like
He's sadistic.
Really. And it's hard to choose what to show and how much to show with the Christmas past stuff, because like probably 60% of this movie is Christmas past, going through like Scrooge's entire life. And like I said, he's molested by a priest at boarding school, but then also we go to him being like first like a capitalist, like evil, like his workers are all dying, and then he tries to force a woman to have sex with him for money and all this stuff. And it's an emotional roller coaster that I get. That's what Scrooge is going through, like his entire life, you know, replaying it and seeing like all the crazy stuff he's been through, mainly the terrible stuff he's done. But once we get to the end and Scrooge is not necessarily forgiven, which I did like, he's not forgiven, but he wants to do better. It's hard for it to land the way that it should, when like probably the majority of stuff is like, that's just like unforgivable what he was doing. And I love complicated characters. I don't think that characters have to be good. I don't think that they need to be liked, but it was like, wow, it was a lot to handle, with the vast majority of stuff being just terrible. And then it's like, it's a Christmas story, and he's running down the street. He's like, Merry Christmas. And I'm like, you killed like 30 people, but you know.
But hey, get your happy ending on, I guess.
Yeah.
Jenny, let's go back to your George C. Scott version. What was your worst thing about this film?
My worst thing about this film was I wasn't the biggest fan of the portrayal of Jacob Marley.
Really? That's actually really
yes.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it just, I mean, while I did, when I was watching it for the first consumption of it, I was like, oh, okay, that's like classic George Jacob Marley. But when you think about it, and when you like, I took a time to think about it after, I was like, this just feels like he's yelling at him, like he's berating him. Like Jacob Marley is supposed to be a friend. There's a lot of tragedy with the character, but this just feels like, you're a moron. Get your life together. Come on. Like it was kind of more like just roasting him and berating him, when it wasn't. It just didn't feel
there was
like
no love beneath it.
There was no actual love, which I guess when you're a ghost, you don't get to have feelings anymore. That's at least what this version feels like. It's just anger. It's just pure anger.
Speaking of pure anger, David, for your version starring Kelsey Grammer, what was your bestest thing about your film?
The best thing about this film was the ending scene.
I would agree, actually.
Yeah, there's no molestation in this film. The only
he said
who
wantingly, God, I wanted some drama.
The only people
God, I
who
needed
get
some
molested is the audience, and there's brief respite during the ending scene because it's the longest period without a fucking song. And it's quite a nice scene, and then they start singing again, and it's all over. Yeah, that's the best thing about this film.
That's the best thing about this film. Let's go to you, Gary. What was your best thing about your film, about your FX version? I'm very intrigued to hear this.
Yeah, let me say that. So I gave this a 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I did like it. It was like, even though it was 3 hours of just grim, which is hard to get through, sometimes we're sad. So whatever. I loved Guy Pearce in this. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, they threw him in the kitchen and he was cooking. I tell you, he goes. Some of the emotional work he does in some of these scenes where he's hard and well, he's he's angry. He's angry.
Words,
he's not hard. He's angry, and then he starts to open up, and then his emotional journey. Even though I talked about it in the last little diatribe, maybe for the movie felt weird. His performance was great, and it kind of reminded me of, like, for example, a movie like American Sniper, which I think is like an okay movie, but Bradley Cooper is in every single like frame of that movie and is so freaking good. That's like this. I was like, this was an okay movie. Guy Pearce is giving everything. Like, I haven't seen all of his stuff, but I'm like, this has got to be up there because it was really impressive what he was doing, for sure. Everything from the mannerisms to his posture to his voice to his emotional acting was great. So Guy Pearce shot up my rankings after this. I was like, what a freaking guy, you know?
Jennie, your last little diatribe on your thing that was half-baked about your George C. Scott version.
So this is actually the way the plot flowed in this movie is something I've actually seen before. This script, if not the same, is very similar for a lot of local Arizona theaters. They do this version of Christmas Carol, the way the story flows and the aesthetics, etc. That being said, while it is a traditional version, I don't think every scene is needed to be in this to tell and get the story and the points across. I do want to give this movie credit because it never lingers too long on these what I deem unnecessary scenes. I feel like we are in each scene for the right amount of time. It's never like a 2-second moment. It's never a we're here for 10 extra minutes than we should be. It's all plotted out perfectly. So I do want to give the movie credit on that.
Okay. And I saved what must have been the hardest choice for the entire selection of any category for David. And David, what was your number one? You're the only one who saw your version, so you get your pick of the litter. What was your number one worst thing about your Christmas Carol the musical?
I do not like musicals. In general, like, there are good musicals, but most of them I don't like. I just don't enjoy them at all. I didn't think the music was good in this. I didn't
either.
I didn't enjoy any of this movie, really. Like, even that last scene, it was like relief, you know? But I don't enjoy musicals, and this one is a particularly boring one.
Yep.
The worst thing, though, do not give me a dance number for the sake of a dance number. There's nothing I hate more about musicals than dance numbers for the sake of a dance number that don't actually propel the plot forward. I love Singing in the Rain, but the worst thing about that movie is the weird extended...
Make 'em laugh.
Not that.
Oh, okay.
Not that. Is that there's like this extended sort of...
Oh, the
unrelated
dream sequence, dance dream sequence. Yes,
yeah, and it's like it goes on forever, and I'm like, what has this got to do with the movie again? Nothing. And there's at least two of those that I can think of right now in this Christmas Carol.
Jennie, you thought your Marley was bad. Let me raise the stakes and give you a Marley dance number when he first comes into play.
Yeah,
my goodness gracious. Oh.
That's
wasn't
so
even thinking about
unneeded.
that one.
David, let me ask, RRR or your Christmas Carol that you had
This
to
better not be close, Dave. You better not be thinking about this, David. This is so disrespectful.
This is, I don't know. Like, this is the only Christmas Carol I've ever seen. Like, I've never seen any other Christmas
that's so
Carol.
sad. If I'd have known that, I might have given you a better one.
Your Christmas Carol that you watched because it was a musical and had the dance numbers versus Natu versus RRR.
I mean,
That's an Oscar winner.
Is a great number. Like,
Yes.
that was really great. And so,
That's right.
given that this movie had nothing great, I'll give it to RRR.
Yo,
Thank
let's
you.
go.
Yes, let's go.
We've come around as much as
Full
we can.
circle.
For sure.
Bless you.
Yeah. They are best friends and they're fighting, but will they make up?
This is like an actual lyric.
Jenny, whenever
Pretty
you get
much,
yeah,
yeah.
whenever you get a chance, go do
Watch
yourself a favor
RRR.
and watch all 4 hours of RRR.
It'll blow your freaking mind.
You'll enjoy. Yeah,
That's gonna take me a whole week, guys. I'll try my best.
I'll try my best. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, in conclusion, here's the way that I view these films that you all have seen. Jenny, you saw A Christmas Carol starring George C. Scott as Scrooge. Whenever I look at this version of A Christmas Carol, I find it, like you said, much to what you've stated here, I find it to be the most traditional version of A Christmas Carol. I find it to be a litmus test of all Christmas carols, and that if it's better than that, then I think it's a really good version. If it's a worse version than that, then it must be bad. And finally, I find it to be the number one defining version of Scrooge, where whenever I think of Scrooge, I think I identify it as George C. Scott and his version, and everybody else is trying to acclimate to him. Guy Pearce, I'll get to you later. But I find that to be the most defining version, and I think that there are a lot of clever choices, especially for the medium that he was in. I thought that he was very set a standard for all Scrooges to follow. So that's how I see Jenny's version. Gary, your version was FX's A Christmas Carol. Again, echoing a lot of your sentiments, very dark. I loved the innovation of the film, and I loved how just, even though I knew the entire story, there was not a moment in that 3 hours where I knew where the hell we were going, because they just threw all the guidelines out the window, and they said, we will have the barest of bones of a skeleton of what this show is, of what this movie is, of what this story is, and we will make it our goddamn own. And they do. They really, really do, to where by the end, I don't even know if it's possible that I can forgive Scrooge, but my God, they try to dig their way out, and it's a fascinating study. Cannot recommend it. It's for possibly all the wrong reasons. It's my favorite version of A Christmas Carol because it made it so that here's my thing, is I found it to be the most innovative and inventive ways. So they dared to do something that very rarely have I seen done outside of like the new way to interpret A Christmas Carol is make it a musical or something. Very
Probably
rarely
the only version of A Christmas Carol that opens with a man's face getting peed on.
That is true. That is true. Yes, the only one that exists of that.
Yeah.
And then we come to David's musical. This version, the musical version, stars one of my favorite actors, Kelsey Grammer, just completely not phoning it in, but phoning it in a music as much as one can in a musical. My God. And it's the worst version I've ever seen. It was the new one of this past year, and it was a jog. It was an absolute chore to get through. It was the only time I've ever considered.
I'm so glad you're saying this, because I was like, this can't be what Philip can't call this film great. Like his one of okay.
No, it was I've seen better musical versions. The Muppets, all right. A Muppet musical version is all right. I've seen that one as well. Surprisingly, Disney has a very fun, and little Mickey Mouse stars as Fred, and I think that they cast appropriately. I think casting whenever you go to themed Christmas carols matters a lot. But needless to say, even though it stars a lot of favorite actors of mine, especially in the musical theater realm, it just completely misses the mark. And each and every time I don't find a justified number. I don't like the actual version of the music that they chose. I couldn't even tell you one memorable moment outside of one moment that is stuck in me and my girlfriend's relationship that we talk like, this has by far the worst looking, the sickest version of Tiny Tim you will ever find. My God.
Are you sure?
Gary,
let me ask really quick.
Your Tiny Tim in FX's dark, it gets lost in the darkness, quite honestly. Continue though, Gary.
When you say Kelsey Grammer was phoning it in, what level are we talking about? Like Dakota Johnson and Madam Web phoning it in?
Not that, just because again, I feel like a musical necessitates that you have to give some energy, but it is just a bad performance. It's not. It's probably like imagine if you would Clint Eastwood as Scrooge and doing all the Clint Eastwood.
Get the hell off my Christmas.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. There's no real wiggle room. It's a caricature of the character. So that's where I stand. I feel completely just I feel so rejuvenated.
Are you satisfied, you little torture master, you little game maker?
I love it. I think that the twist was brilliantly spun out, and that's why I didn't want any of you to talk before the podcast began. I feel so satisfied. I hope that the feeling of Christmas is filled within each and every one of you and your significant others for the rest of the season until Christmas, and then you can watch your version again or watch one of the others. And hey, you listening out there in the audience right now, please go watch any of them except for the Christmas Carol musical. And yeah. So, David, had I known / remembered, I think is because it's come up before in the podcast annals of history. Had I remembered that this was your first version of Christmas Carol that you've ever seen, I probably would have picked a different one. But I still am glad for the comedy that you got.
Never watching any of them. It's not happening. Okay, you know, Phil, you've accused me of being a Scrooge in the past on the podcast. I'm not. I love Christmas. I just celebrate Christmas in a slightly different way than the commercial Christmas is celebrated. For me, it's really more about family and that, you know, like I don't like Christmas music very much. Christmas movies, some of them are good, most of them are a bit tiresome. There's a point early in the movie where Scrooge is making his way from work back to his house, and everyone is berating him, like, give to charity, or like, do this, do that. And I'm like, if people were like that to me, I would be the same. I'd be like, get the hell away from me.
David's version got the justification of Gary's version, where they tried to make it like, hey, I understand where this comes from. I don't know if they accomplished it in Gary's version. They certainly accomplished it in David's, so we'll give them that.
Yeah, I mean, look, like Scrooge was molested, but like, get in line, bud. Like, who wasn't? You
Get
can't
in
just,
line,
You
Scrooge.
can't go kill
Oh
people.
my god!
You got who among us hasn't gotten Scrooged once or twice?
Come on, dude. Like, you can't.
All
You
right.
can't just be like killing people.
Jesus. All right, Jenny, let's go. Let's end this on a fun fact or two, if any are to be had. Of course, yours are specific to your version, so we'll have to end it there on that.
Find one or two things that I can share that don't just stick with
Yours.
my
Okay.
version. I was able to find a couple of general ones. I do want to note one thing about my version. Apparently, this is the only traditional adaptation of A Christmas Carol where we see Scrooge's father on screen. He's mentioned in the book, but he's never actually been seen. This is the only version that's been on screen, TV, movie, etc., where he's been actually seen. So I did
It's
want to
mostly-
note that.
It's
He
mostly
isn't this
Belle.
one, though.
Oh, he isn't. Oh, yeah, because
He beats him with the cane.
But one of the few, one of the
Yes.
very rare. Usually, it's just Belle coming to, or not Belle. It's his sister usually coming up to pick him up from the school for boys, and
Hey,
then
you
that's
see him
it.
you see him in the musical version, the father.
Oh, so maybe it's
you
as
do?
of the
Yeah.
time. Of,
Yeah, in the
Hmm,
courtroom
Maybe
scene.
that might have been fact at the time these were written then. Okay.
Yeah. These two are
so
newer versions too of Christmas Carol, so makes sense.
Charles Dickens, he used to have the rights to A Christmas Carol, but he lost those rights in a lawsuit filed by numerous imposters claiming the story as their own. So it's been more public domainy for a very long time, hence why I guess there's so many freaking versions of it. He did try to get some of the success back with writing another book called Bleak House, and it was about corruption in the English courts. So he got a little like, you guys suck.
How meta.
Little,
How meta
right.
of the 1800s.
Oh, and you know what? I did find this one fact specifically about mine interesting, so I do want to share this one. Apparently, there's a lot of scenes shot in my version where it's just a bunch of people walking around, singing Christmas carols, bringing presents home, riding in carriages, things like that. One of these scenes had to be refilmed entirely because a little polystyrene cup flew
Ah,
in front of the camera onto the set.
they got Game of Thrones.
They got Game of Thrones.
where they had the modern day drinking appendage come through.
Yes.
Yes.
But yes, those are my facts for this one.
I
so.
cannot overstate just how joyful this episode has made me, how much love and goodwill towards my fellow man this episode has brought me. So I'm hoping that that goodwill carries through to you, Gary, and that you will join us for next week's episode and play some games with us. Does that sound fine?
Bah. Humbug. No,
That's
I'll
a
be
yes
there.
if I ever heard it. Yes. All right. All right. Thank you, Gary. We'll see you soon, okay?
Well, that was very loud in my ear just now. But that is the sound of the chorus for this week's mini segment, which is Hall of Fame. I have decided upon a category of the world's worst thing that could happen. Gentlemen, the category is world's worst event to be late for.
I'm going to say a stand-up comedy show. If
Ooh.
you're late to a stand-up comedy show, you know the comic is going to point it out, and he's going to use it in his jokes, and he's going to make fun of you. He's going to pick on you, perhaps in front of your date who you're trying to impress. So yeah, I'm going to say that that's one of the worst things you can be late to.
I interpret it a little bit differently, and I'm going to personalize it in that I'm going to just say the general, your graduation party, I should say, because that's one of those events that simply cannot happen if the main person it cannot end. People can't leave because they came for a person until the person of honor is there. It's one of the few times that you just need to, like, it's so simple. You just need to go up and shake their hand and drop off an envelope. But if they are not there, if you are the person upon whose graduation is being celebrated and you're late, you are Scrooging, to borrow from earlier in this episode, everybody there to not be able to just Irish goodbye and leave whenever they so choose. You are keeping them all there, and now they're going to have to eat more food and just be merry around. It's awful. So I'm going to say your graduation party.
Your own graduation party.
Yes.
Okay. While I do agree being late to your own graduation party would suck, I've never known anyone to not already be at their graduation party when it starts. So I'm not sure how realistic that one would be. So my choice...
Speaking from personal experience, one can dissent, but go ahead, Jenny.
Have you been late to your own graduation party?
I was very late.
Oh, Philip.
I was on like the other side of
you
town.
are the first, yes.
Yeah. I was on the other side of town. They were all at the restaurant. And oh my God, the side eyes I got from a few that were like, I was planning on coming. I was planning on leaving in 30 minutes, and now I got to stick around. I got it all. It was all in the side eye.
Well, I do want to stand by my original opinion and choice then. David's situation, oh my God, the anxiety I would have would be terrifying. So yes, stand-up, world's worst event to be late for, stand-up comic, you become the joke. Well, gentlemen, this has been rather a jolly episode, to say so myself, thanks to... It is certainly for one person on this podcast. I can tell he had a great time. Merry Christmas. But we do, unfortunately, have to end the festivities by ending this episode. But before we do that, we have some people to thank.
Thank you to Casson Crossland and Jake Corlang for the music you hear on the show.
Thanks to Ryan Ardell and Josh Hans for a lot of the audio bits you hear throughout the show.
Thank you to Rudy Truck for all of your wonderful graphics that you see in all of our socials. And thank you to you, the listener. You're getting cozy over there by the fire, listening to our stories and reviews and our beautiful voices. Thank you always for tuning in and supporting us. If you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. Why don't you stay a while? To keep up with our content and what we're up to, please go to our social media. You can find us on the usual spots: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Roast and Toast Pod. You can always listen to us on all the usual places as well, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, of course, and Google, but not Pandora. Bah, humbug. Screw you, Pandora.
God bless us, everyone, including the bear who ate the entire prize goose.